Episode 18. So, as promised, today is August 2nd for me. For you guys, when you watch this, it'll be August 9th. And with it being August 9th, when you watch this, it means it'll be 4 weeks before the start of the 2025 NFL season. So I wanted to cover that. That is what I wanted to talk about today. And with it being that, and the season having a ramp-up thing, as well as in the volume of coverage, today I wanted to talk about the guy who I not only believe is the greatest NFL player of all time, but has the greatest career in team sports that I've covered. No, in team sports that I've watched. So, no baseball, no hockey, but football, basketball, and American football. He trumps all of these guys. So, whether you want to talk about in football, you have Pele with his 3 World Cups and winning the amount of stuff he did for Santos. Messi winning everything he did across his career, winning literally everything available to him. Cristiano Ronaldo winning everything but the World Cup and turning up every single moment when it really mattered. Whether you want to go to basketball with Bill Russell and his 11 titles in 13 years. Whether you want to go to Kareem winning at every single level which he won, high school, collegiate, the NBA, winning more or less instantaneously in all of those, and then winning another 5 championships later in his career, and he got Magic Johnson. Magic Johnson, who turned the Lakers from, just a good side into, and he really had a skyrocketing effect on them, taking them to 5, helping lead them to 5 championships in 12 years, 9 NBA Finals appearances in 12 years. You have Michael Jordan, 6 championships, 6-0 in NBA Finals with 6 Finals MVPs. You have LeBron with his 4 titles in 3 different destinations, all as the best player, which is something that no one else has done in the sport. You have all of these different guys who all have a case. Even in American football, you have Joe Montana. He won 4 titles in his 15 years. You had Terry Bradshaw. He won 4 in 14 years, but he wasn't at the same level as Joe Montana as an individual. Troy Aikman, he won 3 titles in 12 years. That's 1 every 4. And he was part of one of the greatest NFL sides. That was the dominant side of the 1990s. They were obliterating every single one. Even if you want to go away from the quarterbacks, you have Charles Haley, who had 5 in 13 years. Absolutely ridiculous. Albeit, he's a non-quarterback and there's only so much influence he can have. But there is an argument that the pass rusher, which is what Charles Haley was, he's the guy who gets after the quarterback and puts that guy on the ground, is just as impactful as anyone that isn't a quarterback in the entire sport. But there is one man which stands above all. And this is a man who turned me from a mass hater into not a super fan, but a real fan, and someone who never cost me when I picked him to win. And never left me with egg on my face when I picked him to win. He did it when I picked against him, right? Especially against the Falcons, right? My God. My God. I'm going to go into that, but a quick story beside. So when it was halftime in that game, my English teacher, he was a Patriots fan. And I sent him an email saying, "You're getting wrecked by the birds." Because that, Dirty Birds, I think was the Falcons' name. But guess what? I have to go face him the next day. That wasn't very fun. Because I had alternating English teachers at this point. So 3 days I'd have him, 2 days I had another one. And his first day was always Monday. And that wasn't very fun. I was left with egg all over my face. Because I picked the Steelers a couple of weeks before as well. Yeah. But yeah, Brady wins every 3 years. The only person with a comparable thing is Haley with 5 and 13. That's 1 in every 2-6, and he's better in terms of a win rate. Montana won 4 and 15, which is 1 in 3 point something. Bradshaw won 4 and 14, which is 1 every 3.5. That is ridiculous. So listen, Brady, what he accomplished across 2 franchises, across multiple coaches, across so many different iterations, across his role evolving all across time, is absolutely insane. And his levels of performance in the highest moments right from the start gives him the best case to me. Now let's run through this, right? So the initial gripe that people have with Tom is that he had an elite coach and he had an elite defense. Now, did he have a very good defense? Yes, he did. That defense was very, very good. In that Super Bowl, that first one, they held the Rams to 17 points. And the Patriots won. Why did they win? Because they drove down the field. But let's look at Belichick first and foremost. So, Belichick without Brady. So let's look at his time with the Pats, right? So he went 5 and 11 in his first year. And then Drew Bledsoe starts in game 1. And they lose that game as well. Credit to Bill, he stuck with Tom when he put him in the lineup after Drew. Because, Brady went 11 and 3 in that season. As a starter, he went 11 and 4 total. 2008 Patriots. So Brady rips his knee in half in opening week. They go 11-5 with Matt Castle. They only missed the playoffs because of the NFL's divisional rule, and they lost out to the Dolphins. 16 Pats, 3-1. Now, 08 and 16 are the 2 years that really pushed this narrative that Tom was nothing without Brady up until, no, for a long, long time, right? Up until basically Brady won that Super Bowl in Tampa Bay and what happened to Bill after. But then if we look at, the time post Brady leaving, so Belichick won 29 and 38. That is one less. So, that's not very good either. And they had one playoff loss, right? So Brady was winning. He went 11-5 and 13-4 and 8-9 in his 3 years in Tampa Bay. Tompa Bay, as some people ended up calling it, especially Mr. Skip Bayless. And then So Brady had a vastly superior one. He had 2 winning seasons, 1 losing season. And ultimately, especially in that first year, he led them to the Super Bowl. Next year, 13-4. They played the Rams close. They really could have won that game. Ultimately, they didn't. And meanwhile, Bill had 1 good season, and then he lost the rest. And then with the Browns, he went 36-44, and he went 1-1 in the playoffs. 1 playoff win. So his overall record without Brady was 85-101. So that's a 45% win pace. That is something between 8.5 wins in a standard NFL season. Now with the 17 games. And with Brady, he went 219-64. That's a 77% win pace. That is between 12 and 13 wins. That's a lot. That's a big difference. And in the playoffs, they went 30-11. So, again, 73. So you're winning in a 16-game pace, 17-game pace. You're winning 11, 12 games a season. That's ridiculous. There's no other way you can slice it. So that is the first feather. So, Bill struggled without Brady less than Brady struggled without Bill. Right? Because even in Tampa Bay, he won 1-3, which is the exact same pace he won at for the rest of his career when he was the starting quarterback. So, again, what can you do with that? Who was the A-side in that? Tom. Right? Would he have reached the levels without Bill? Maybe, probably not. But at the end of the day, he won without Bill. The other guy didn't. And he made some mistakes. And Bill didn't win before Tom either. So, So let's run through this. So 2000, right? 5-11. So they're awful. Drew Bledsoe. Tom was picked 6th in the 6th round. The 150-something pick. He doesn't start the whole year. Maybe he took a couple of snaps here and there, but he wasn't playing. And then in the 2001 season, his first year as a proper NFL quarterback, he wins the Super Bowl. His record when he was starting was 11-3. They get to the 2 seed. They get the bye. They go into Pittsburgh. This is Pittsburgh, pure heritage, steel curtain. Obviously, they're not that steel curtain at the moment, but they would win the Super Bowl just a couple of years later. They were a very good side, stiff defense. Tom goes in there, and they win the game, and they get through. Now, again, this was a largely defensive effort, right? And then he gets to the Super Bowl. So this is the greatest show on turf. They're going for I want to say a back-to-back Super Bowl titles. I can't remember if that. I really should have included that in notes. But that was a very, very strong Los Angeles Rams side. Was it Rams? I think it was the Rams. No, it was the Rams. I just can't remember whether it was St. Louis or no. It would have been St. Louis at that point. So what ends up happening is they get there, and the expectation is that the Rams are going to blow the Patriots away. Now, why don't they blow them away? Why? Well, because they have quite possibly the greatest NFL defensive mind in the history of the sport, which is what made this partnership so special. Because ultimately, no, they didn't. It was the 99 Rams that won the Super Bowl. Yeah, 99 Rams. So they won the Super Bowl literally 2 years before this. They're back in the Super Bowl for the first time in 2 years. And the expectation is that they win. They were something like a 2-touchdown favorite. Partially because the NFC had dominated the AFC throughout this decade, throughout the decade before. But partially just because no one expected this young upstart team with Tom Brady, who's got a bit of a fat face and he's not really thrived on any level since he's come into the league. And he's not putting up huge stats. They don't think he can win. He goes in, they hold them 17-17. And they think, and John Madden says, the commentator, he says, don't do this. Don't give them a chance to win. Just take it to overtime and take your chances. What do the Patriots do? They say, forget that. Tom, get us in field goal range. Tom, drill, drill, drill. Gets them down the field, kicks the field goal. Brady wins his first Super Bowl, and it's absolutely magnificent. They actually had a top 6 offense that season, and in 2000 they were 25th. That's instantaneous. Even if the stats didn't show, that 2001 offense was significantly better. They went 6 to 25. That's like a 4x improvement or something like that. I don't know. 2002, they missed the playoffs. They went 9-7. Very disappointing. Brady's stats were about the same. He was similar level. 2003, they go up 14-2. Still, he's a bit of a game manager. He's not at the level of Tom Brady that we come to know and expect or know and love or hate depending on who you're affiliated towards. But he steps up in the playoffs, particularly in the Super Bowl. He threw for 350 yards in that Super Bowl. He threw for 3 touchdowns. And again, he led the game-winning drive to win the game from 32 to 29. So if you think that is instantaneously, third year, 2 Super Bowls, wow, that's absolutely fantastic. 2004, back-to-back Super Bowls, 14-2. They end up going... This is a back-to-back. This is the first back-to-back since the Broncos 7 years prior with John Elway, when he leaves his career behind, right? So Brady leaves the drive down the field, they kick a field goal, and that puts the game ultimately out of reach. So it didn't even matter when the Eagles tried to come back, despite Terrell Owens having an absolutely brilliant game that day. 2005, good, not great. Brady is still in that sort of overqualified game manager role, right? Where he's still zinging passes, he's still dropping darts off, especially in the intermediate range, and he's absolutely fantastic. But he's not at the level yet where you think, okay, wow, this is potentially one of the all-time greatest quarterbacks yet. You're one of the greatest. He's more Terry Bradshaw than Joe Montana at this particular point, right? And then they're good, but it's nothing like they're not breaking the doors off anyone yet. 2006, right? Don't you fall. 2006, right? They go 12-4. They're up to a top 10 offense. He throws 24-12, nothing exceptional, and they blew a huge lead to the Colts. Right, they were up 21-3 in the Super Bowl. No, in the conference championship game to get to another Super Bowl, their first one since a couple of years ago, and it all going swimmingly. And then Peyton Manning, he has one of his final playoff moments, and he gets them over the top, and they manage to get to the Super Bowl. And Brady doesn't have a chance to get ring number 4 in year number 6 or 5 starting, or in year number 6 starting. Which is pretty insane. And then, so at this point, he's a good game manager. He has high capacity in clutch moments. He can drive them down the field when you really need them to. But he hadn't really kicked it into gear as like this wow quarterback yet. That wasn't the perception around him was still like, oh yes, system, right? Great defense. He doesn't lose the ball. He doesn't lose the game. Keep going with his formula, we'll do it. But ultimately, they haven't won in a couple of years now, and they decided to change it up. They add Randy Moss, who is an absolutely ridiculous receiver. He's unhappy. They get him for a cheap value, and they go 16-0. And that wasn't just because of Randy Moss, right? They go from 20-something points a game up to 37 points a game, and the average scoreline per game, they gave up 17 points a game. They were winning games by 20 points a game, 3 touchdowns. Do you understand what that is? So, for context, it's like a 3-goal thing, right? If on Madden, if you go down 21-0 too quickly, or you're down 3 touchdowns too quickly, the game will offer you a quit. They will offer, or at least they used to. I don't know about online now, but they used to be like, hi, this level looks like he's too much better than you. You should quit this, go play someplace else, because you're simply not as good as this guy. So sod off, basically. That's how bad and dire the situation was. They were winning games by 20 points a game. And they cruise through, they get to the Super Bowl, and ultimately, he really struggled, right? That Giants defensive line with Justin Tuck and Osi Umenyiora, and they had a bunch of other guys. They managed to put pressure on Brady. They managed to get him on the ground, get pressure in Brady's face. The fact that they only played the Patriots a few weeks ago definitely helped them in their planning, because I want to say that they played them either in week 16 or 17 to get to the 15 or 16-0, and they would have had some film on them like, okay, let's go. Now, you would have still expected Brady to play better, but this was the first sort of black mark on his career. And ultimately, it was disappointing, but, he came back. But then 2008, he rips his knee in half. He tears his ACL in week 1. Patriots go 11-5. The rumblings of, is Brady really that good? I mean, Matt Castle just took them. He had Randy Moss. He had this. He had that. He manages to get them to 11-5. How good really is Tom Brady? Ends up being the narrative question. You can sort of twist it into if you want to negotiate in bad faith. So then, Brady comes back. He's not wow. Like, he gets comeback player of the year, but, he's doing okay and he's fine, basically, but it's not like, oh my god, what's going on? 2010 is the first year we see the true return of Thomas Edward Patrick Brady Jr. Skip Bayless popularized that name. Brady's back. Randy Moss is gone. He goes 36-4, and they do absolutely brilliant. And what happens there is, from this point on, 2010 to about 2018, you can say, was one of the greatest feats that you'll ever see from a quarterback, right? So what ends up happening from here? So he goes 36-4, and he gets the first unanimous MVP. No, did I get the right year? Yeah, I did. 2010. They go 14-2. I thought I got it mixed up for a second there. So 14-2, Brady gets unanimous MVP, but they lose to the Jets in the divisional round, and that is ultimately super disappointing. They scored 21, which isn't enough. They lose to 28, but 14-2. They think, okay, right, Tom Brady's back, unanimous MVP. We'll be fine from here. 2011, they go They can't remember. I think it was 13-3. They went. Sometimes, for some reason, I don't end up writing the thing. And they chew up and spit out a bunch of different teams, and they get to the Super Bowl again, and they lose again. To guess who? Eli Manning, Tom Brady's arch rival somehow. I don't quite know how that happened. But ultimately, what ends up happening is he gets to that point, and it's like, okay, fine. Then 12 and 13 again is quite disappointing seasons when you consider everything. And then 2014. So this is a beautiful story. So at early point in the season, the Patriots play the Kansas City Chiefs, and they get blown out on Monday Night Football. They get blown out, and there are questions that they asked Bill Belichick, who in this same off-season prior drafts Jimmy Garoppolo in the second round, and everyone's thinking, oh, that's strange. Brady's still very, very good. Why are you drafting Jimmy Garoppolo? Why are you drafting this guy when you have the best quarterback in the game, when you have a guy with 3 Super Bowl rings? And so they asked Bill on that night. They lost like 41-14. Doesn't mean he was like, next question. I'm not going to answer that. That's a stupid question. And then, or he just walks out, something like that. He wasn't very happy with the question, essentially. And so what happens from here is they go on an absolutely brilliant run. The pass blocking was not very high. They were one of the lower ranked offensive lines in the entire league. Doesn't matter though. Brady goes 33-9, and he drives them through, and he throws for over 4,000 yards, and he only has one 1,000-yard receiver, and it's his tight end, Gronkowski, who admittedly is possibly the best ever because of his mix and his mesh. He follows Brady around, and they play the Seahawks. So for context, this Seahawks team is the best defense that the league has seen in a very long time. They're conceding 14, 15, 16 points a game constantly. The year prior, they conceded, I think, 17 points in the NFC Championship game. Yeah, to the San Francisco 49ers, to a super dynamic quarterback in Colin Kaepernick, previous year they beat the Packers and they got to the final. No, they got to the Super Bowl, and they played the Ravens really, really tough. And what happens from there is you end up getting the Seahawks. They play Peyton Manning-led Broncos, who to that point had quite possibly, and maybe still is, the greatest regular season in NFL history. They take that 55-10 quarterback, and they annihilate him. They ruin him, they abuse him, they do an absolutely unholy things. They pick him off twice, they force him a safety, the fumble goes over the head, they absolutely obliterate them. They win 43-8. They only actually scored 29 points with their offense because they didn't need to, because the rest of the points come from the defensive end. Actually, 27 points with their offense because the safety happened as well. Albeit the safety wasn't actually the defense's doing. It was a snap that went over the head of Peyton Manning. That was the first play of the game or something ridiculous like that. So, this is a team. And then this is a team with, at the same time, in 2014 season, in the NFC Conference Championship game, you know what they did? So Russell Wilson turns the ball over 5 times. This is ridiculous, right? And they take Aaron Rodgers, who threw not many picks in the entire season. I either have 5 or 8 in my head, right? And they force him into 2 turnovers, albeit he had a gimpy calf. But they have 5 turnovers, and they drag this game to overtime because the Packers could only score 22 points, and they win the game in overtime. And then in the Super Bowl, Jeremy Lane breaks his arm in the first half. The Seahawks end up going up 24-14, and Brady is down by 10. Shock. He's in a position where he needs a comeback, and he stages an absolutely brilliant showing to get the Patriots up by 10. Now, this is the same team, albeit a different outlook at corner because of what happened to Jeremy Lane. So Brady takes these guys and he puts them and he drags them out to deep waters and he makes it so, wow. Just what can we can't stop this guy. He's in a zone now. Gronk is eating up everyone. He's concussing people. Julian Edelman is taking huge licks from a 6'4" unit of a man in Cam Chancellor, getting drilled to the floor, getting up and running for a further 10 yards. He's absolutely insane. And what happens is that game actually led to the Seahawks blowing their organization up because they then trade Max Unger for Jimmy Graham, which worsens their side and their setup because of the fact they don't have any sort of offensive line for Marshall Lynch, for an old and aging Marshall Lynch to get any type of traction behind. So again, So Brady takes this team and he gets them in there. And okay, is a large part of this because of Malcolm Butler's interception? Absolutely. But there is not even the opportunity for Malcolm Butler to make that interception. There is not the opportunity for that play that they worked on. And there is not the chance that Brady has to jump up and down on the sideline like a child again. If Brady doesn't lead them back and lead them to 14 straight points and take them from 24-14 up to 28-24 because he is simply the greatest quarterback ever. When it's crunch time, when it's clutch time, there is no one else who you would want leading a drive. It was absolutely insane what he managed to do that day. And the fact that this isn't the finest comeback of his career, and I'm going to detail that when we get to it, the fact that he did that, no words. It's insane. Like that that is the fact that isn't the number one comeback in your career is obscene, and the fact that you have one which is twice as good, 2.5 times as good, you can even argue just in terms of point differential. Wow. So, and then 2015, and even in that run, by the way, they beat one team by a lot. No, they beat one team in a one crunch game. And they blew out the Colts in another game, 45-10 or something ridiculous. 2015, again, another 4,000-yard season, 36-7. They actually got to 10-0. There was a very good chance, had they beaten the Denver Broncos in that game, that they lost in overtime when C.J. Anderson made a streak down the left channel, that they would have gone 16-0 again. Because the rest of their schedule wasn't overly hard. They lose that game. They go into the playoffs a little cold. And then they run into the Broncos again, who are on an insane hot streak. Von Miller having one of the best defensive playoff campaigns that we've seen. That game, he had a pick. I think he had 3 sacks on Tom Brady, and he just made his life a living hell the entire time. He's the one who picked off Brady, obviously. The amount of times he jumped off and got them right on time. He anticipated the snap count perfectly. The stretchiness and the explosion that he had out of his legs to get past there and get to Brady on the floor, it was ridiculous. And even still, and Brady didn't have his finest game this day. He actually threw in a 50% completion percentage. And even on the final drive, when they were down 20-18, because of the fact that his kicker missed an extra point to open the game, they were down 4th and 10. Josh McDaniels, I'm pretty sure he was the offensive coordinator at the time, he wanted to run a screen pass. And what does Brady do? Brady audibles, and he's like, no, you're not. We're going to throw this, and it's going to work. And they got the pass off, Gronkowski catches it, and they try it again, and it just doesn't work out in the end. Like, Brady, from 2014 up until 2018-19 season, was genuinely like a demon. And you can even say 2020 and 2021. Like, those 7-8 years, it was like dealing with Satan himself. So, 2016, you can argue that this is the best Patriots team. It's either this or 2007, from what I've seen a lot of people say. They were elite on both ends. They went 14-2. Again, this was part of the reason where people ended up saying that, oh, Brady's not actually as good as you think he is. Because Jimmy G and Jacoby Brissett, they went a combined 3-1 in the games where Tom was hurt. No, Tom was suspended due to Deflategate. I've never looked too much into that. People say he cheated. You can say what you want. So Brady's record for this season, regular season and playoffs included, 14-1. He lost one game, and that was a one-score game to the Seahawks. And that Seahawks team was, at that point, maybe the best team in the NFL, right? They were the best team in the NFC. I firmly believe, had Earl Thomas not broken his leg, they get to the Super Bowl that year. That team was absolutely ridiculous, right? Their defense, Russell Wilson, they had a nice balance in terms of Lockett, Curse, Doug Baldwin. Jimmy Graham was nice. He had one of his better seasons. No, that was the season after. But Jimmy Graham was there. He was a nice utility piece. You had two good backs in Thomas Rawls, CJ Procise, even though he was an injury hit all the time. And Russell Wilson could operate as the guy who could sort of pull everything together. And then the defense. You have Ava. You have Bennett. You have, I don't think Meebane was there, but their run defense was solid as well. You have Wagner. You have KJ Wright. They would often play as the nickel defense. With the fifth defensive back, you had Sherman, you had Jeremy Lane. Sometimes you had various different third corner / safety in there, here and there. Obviously, sometimes you had the third linebacker as well. Cam Chancellor, Earl Thomas. You had an absolutely ridiculous team and setup who just couldn't block, and their defense was overly reliant on Earl Thomas. And, well, just in general, Earl Thomas and Richard Sherman. When they were out, it was just a bit of a drag. And Chancellor's the enforcer, right? So that team beats them. 24-31, and even that was due to a bit of a questionable refereeing call where Chancellor, he sort of did pull down Gronk, but it was within the 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, I thought, so they got away with it. And it was also just the final call of the game. So that was the only time that they lost. That was the only time that Tom Brady lost that season. And now we get to the crowning point of his career. This is so Brady has 3 flashpoint moments for me. The Seahawk win, this win against the Falcons, and then the win in Tampa Bay, because it proved that obviously he could win away from Belichick. What Brady did this game was ridiculous, because for 2.5 quarters he wasn't good. He wasn't good at all, He threw a pick 6 to make it 21-0. So they get the ball with about 2 minutes left in the first half, and they lead it down the field. Gostowski kicks a field goal, and they make it 21-3. The Falcons, so the Pats force a punt. Brady goes 3 and out. Brilliant. This is not remotely what we wanted to start with. And then the Falcons score again. Now it's 28-3, and now you're looking at bloody hell. Right? What can we do here? Right, we're done for. There's absolutely nothing that we can do here. We are finished. No chance. What happens? Brady takes them down the field, and they just score once. And now it's 28-9, and Gostowski misses a kick. Bloody hell. What are we going to do here? So it's 28-9. Still down 19. So the Patriots get the ball back, and then Brady leads them down the field, and they kick a field goal. Fine, good, we're still here. And then Patriots force a fumble. So now, 28-12 goes to 28-20 because Brady leads them into the end zone. And now, this is the key moment here. It's 28-20. Julio Jones catches the ball for a 27-yard completion. Matt Ryan takes a sack, and then they have an offensive holding call, which takes them back 20 yards. Now they're at the New England 45, and they're not going to take a 63-yard field goal. They punched away. 3.5 minutes left. 28-20. There is no other person. You can take Patrick Mahomes. You can take Joe Montana. You can actually include Mahomes in great winners too, if we go based off the start of this thing. Patrick Mahomes, Joe Montana. You can take any single quarterback in the history of the world. Give me Thomas, Edward, Patrick, Brady Jr. The Jr. really ruins it. But I'm going to say the whole thing regardless. 6 passes from the New England 9 up to the Atlanta 2-yard line. James White gets into the end zone. Brady hits Amendola for the 2-point conversion. And here we are. We're all tied up as 28-all. It goes to overtime. And what ends up happening here is the Patriots win the toss, and at that point, the game's over. There is absolutely any hope the Falcons had was they have to win this game through a coin toss. They have to get the game through the coin toss. They have to somehow score a touchdown, which I don't believe they thought they could do at that. Which I don't believe that they believe they could do at that particular point in time. So you have 5 passes from the from the New England 25 to the Atlanta 25. That's covering 50 yards. White has a lovely run. Good, gets him down to the 15. And now, Brady zings a pass towards Martellus Bennett. 13-yard defensive pass interference. Get down to the 2-yard line. James White, toss, dives into the end zone. At that point, I was like, how? So, like I said, right, if I explain this to you, right, so I did not like Tom Brady at this point, right? I was new to the sport and everyone was criticizing Brady. I found Skip Bayless funny, but I didn't like him and Brady was rooting for him. I liked Shannon Sharp, and so he was rooting against Brady, so I was like, oh, I'll root against Brady too. At that point, and like I said, my English teacher, he supported the Pats. So I was like, I want you to suffer because you teased me about Russell Wilson tripping over his center's foot because of bad quarterbacking and things like that. So I was annoyed. I was ready to give him sauce and corn the next day. So I send the email, and I see that Skip is, and I know that Skip is going to come in, and I was like, Jesus Christ. So bear in mind, this is ring number 5. So at this point, to give you some context, a lot of people said that, okay, Montana's won 4. He won 4 and 4. In 4 and 4 Super Bowl attempts, and he was an elite quarterback while he was doing it. Bradshaw wasn't the same. And Tom has 4, but he's also lost 2 Super Bowls. And they were both Super Bowls that he really shouldn't have lost, and he was favored in. The first one was by like 10 points, maybe 2 touchdowns, and the second one was only by 3 points. And so what happens here is that the Patriots are down. So they're down 20-3. No one thinks there's a hope in hell that they're going to win this game. No. And Brady just ticks away. Now, don't get me wrong. They had some very favourable moments, right? It's the ultimate team game at the end of the day. Hightower forced a fumble. The defense forced stop after stop after stop. They forced a holding call. They forced this. They forced that. Julian Edelman got the break of all breaks when the ball sat on the Atlanta Falcons player's buttocks. He picks it up and it says, catch, catch. It didn't hit the floor. Bang. Give them the completion. The Falcons challenged that play and it didn't get overturned. That's how clear-cut it was. And at that point, when I saw it, my heart sank because at that point, I knew where this was going. It was going into overtime, and now it's down to a coin flip. Brady led them, and he gave them the belief that they could pull this off because they know if we just give this guy enough stops, we can pull this off somehow. It doesn't matter how because he is the best ever. That's what their belief they have at that particular point in time. So, ring number 5, he gets no quarterback had ever got more than 4 rings. The only other player to get 5 rings was Charles Haley, who I mentioned at the start of this, and no one had ever got 6, and no one had done it the way Brady had done it, being the key piece in the quarterback for all 5 teams. Brady does this. This is history on the line here. And he pulls it off in the biggest moment possible, and it's absolutely ridiculous. And he cements himself as the guy with this best case as the number 1 quarterback and the number 1 player in the NFL's something year history, 90-something year at this point, I think it was. Over 100 now. So now, it was ridiculous, right? So what was his line in this game? So he goes for 466 yards, 2 touchdowns, 15-yard rushing on 1 attempt, which was huge for Tom because he wasn't running at this point, and he didn't fumble the ball. This is the greatest quarter and a half in football history. It was absolutely ridiculous. And the only reason, like I said, I didn't talk about the Seahawk one in detail is because of the fact that this one happened is the fact that this happened. 25 points. That one was 10. This is 25. 2.5. And you have to score 25 points. You have to be perfect. Everything has to be ting, 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 ting. There can be no failures. You have to be absolutely brilliant for the entire stretch of time. And if you don't, then you're going to lose this game. The next year, 2017, they go 13-3. So that's fine. And, they get to another Super Bowl. So what happens here? God. So, in the 4th against Jacksonville. So, Brady at this point, he has a bunch of stitches in his thumb, right, on his throwing hand. So, he is not playing fully healthy. They're down 10 against what it was probably the best defense in the NFL that year, against the Jacksonville Jaguars. You have A.J. Boye, you have Jalen Ramsey, you have Calais Campbell, you have Yannick Ngakoue, they had a few other guys. I wrote a few other names down here. They had Calais Campbell, who's an absolutely monster. He's a unit. On the offensive end, you have Leonard Fournette to give some threat. Blake Bortles is booty, but, they managed to get to the championship game with him. That defense is absolutely fantastic. Brady leads them. 2 straight touchdowns because they were down 10 in the fourth quarter, 20-10. Brady gets them there, and he scores 2 more touchdowns, and they win the day once again because Brady was just a unique, special individual at the quarterback position. Then they get to the Super Bowl. They score 33 and they lose. This is one of the black marks on Tom's career, right? Because he fumbled the ball when they were down 5, and I thought for all the world, and bear in mind, I was rooting against him. I didn't pick against him, but I rooted against him still, even after the Falcons won. But what happens is, they get to the Super Bowl, they score 33 points. Bill Belichick benches Malcolm Butler, their best cornerback, and they give up 41, and Nick Foles gets the Super Bowl MVP because he throws a bunch and he captures a touchdown. Magnificent. What else can you do with that? But he throws for 500 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. But again, the fumble was at the worst point. He threw for 32 and 8 that year. I think he was the MVP. Was he the MVP? I'm pretty sure he was the MVP this year because Carson Wentz would have won it, but he blew his knee out. But he was absolutely fantastic. This is again a fantastic year from Brady. And then 2018, again. So this was the first year where it looked like there was signs of slippage, but at the same time, the receiving core just wasn't elite like this. Like, you have Edelman, I think they still had Amendola, you had Gronk, who was aging clearly. It just wasn't the same anymore. So if we go, the Kansas City Chiefs, they have home field. Patrick Mahomes just won MVP. His first year starting, he throws for 50 touchdowns. He wins the MVP, this, and this. So Brady has a very good first half, and he stinks up the second half, and it looks as though the Chiefs are going to win. And Brady even throws an interception, but because D Ford was offsides, that interception doesn't count, and they get a lucky break, and they end up getting the ball, and it's fine. And then, overtime. 3 straight 3rd and 10s. Should you get credit for getting to 3rd and 10? I don't know. But 3 straight 3rd and 10s down the field to Rob Gronkowski, and they eventually get the ball into the end zone. And Brady goes to Super Bowl number 8. No. Super Bowl number 9. He gets to Super Bowl number 9. He gets there, and who do they play? The Rams. So, where did this dynasty start? If you remember, the St. Louis Rams, who are now the LA Rams. So, the Patriots dynasty, they started with the Rams, it's going to end with the Rams. They win an ugly game, another defensive fashion game, 13-3. Belichick had a fantastic game. This was by far Brady's worst of any of the Super Bowls, right? They won 13-3, Edelman won the MVP, nothing special at all by Tom, but he led them down the field to get this 1 touchdown on the board, to put the game out of reach from the Rams and really seal everything off. 2019. Right? So you have to factor in, right? At this moment, I'm still always rooting against the Patriots, right? Because I want to see the end of the evil. I want to see the end of the Death Star, right? That's probably an awful Star Wars reference. I've never watched it, but that's what they call them, right? The Death Battlefront or whatever, I don't know. So, this was the clear first year of slippage. Brady at this point could no longer drag the corpses of good receivers and just drag teams that weren't very good to high levels at the same degree that he could before. So he throws, I think he still had 4,000 yards, but he only had 24 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. The same zing wasn't there. Belichick had been trying to force him out for a few years. Belichick wanted to trade him a few years prior. So in one season, Jimmy Garoppolo was traded to the 49ers. They finished 5-11, and they were 1-10 without him. Their wins were with Jimmy. So what ends up happening here is that Belichick wants to say, okay, listen, we can get rid of Brady. Jimmy's ready. Let him keep it. And so Brady, he goes over Belichick's head and goes to Uncle Daddy Kraft and says, listen, what's going on? I've given my entire life to this place, and you're trying to get rid of me now. What is this? And so Kraft is like, you know what? You're right. You're still top. You're still the best. Bill, you're trading Jimmy. No choice about it. Get a good deal for him. And here's the thing. Bill traded him for, he could have traded him for more. Right, that was seen as a cut price deal, especially considering how he started life off at San Francisco. And they got to the Super Bowl, I think, the following year. And so, now Brady's annoyed. Now it's a revenge tour. So then the previous years happened. But now Bill goes to Kraft and he's like, what are we doing? This guy's clearly worse now. Let's get him out the door before. Let's be a year early rather than when he falls off the cliff. Max Kellerman made an entire football career out of saying Tom Brady is going to fall off the cliff. And he never did, because he's just that good. So what ends up happening now is, Tom, he has to go, right? Because they offered him an extension, but it was a low-end extension, and there wasn't a lot of money involved. So now, Brady, he goes to where? So, he goes to the 2019 Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who went 7-9. And that was with a quarterback who went 33 touchdowns. That's pretty good. 30 interceptions. You only play 16 games, 17 games. 16 games in this scenario. So he's almost throwing 2 touchdowns a game. He's throwing just over 2 touchdowns a game and just under 2 picks a game. When you're in that territory, you're in a really bad spot. So he's just awful. So now Tom goes there. Now, obviously, he's not as good, but a huge part is he made those guys believe they can win. Right? He's the guy who led the dressing room. So, and you got to think, right? This is 2020. This is COVID. The NFL year starts in March. They couldn't do organized. They got busted by... Why isn't this closing? They got busted by the local authorities for practicing when people were meant to be doing social distancing. You couldn't practice. You had no preseason games. And what ends up happening is Brady walks into that organization and he brings some of his pals with him. Leonard Fournette, after he was released by the Jaguars, he came because of Brady. He's the one who advocated for him. Rob Gronkowski, Brady's pal from Tampa, Brady's pal from the Patriots. What does he do? He says, listen, get this guy, bring him in, Gronk, come out of retirement, let's do something special over here in the warm weather as opposed to the cold weather. And then you have Antonio Brown. Brown was lobbied hard for by Tom Brady. Brown would not have been that had it not been for Brady. Because ultimately, the team wasn't particularly high on him, and Brady was like, no, trust me, I can get him in. I can fix him. And he was captain save a Bonnie Blue before a Bonnie Blue even existed. That's how great this guy was. He brings Brown and he makes him behave for the remainder of the season. And what ends up happening is they win the Super Bowl, but it wasn't without difficulties. They start the season 7-5. What do they finish? 11-5, and they win the Super Bowl. They started the season 11-5, and who did they lose to here? I wrote it down here. So they lost to. So even though they were 7-5 before the bye, actually they were 7-3 before this. They lost to the Saints twice. That's their intra-divisional rival. They actually lost the division to them, because they had all 3 playoff games on the road to get to the Super Bowl. Then you played the Bears, right? They're tough. They've got a good defense. You lose to them. Then you play the Rams and the Chiefs, and you lose to them as well. The only good win they had the entire year up to this point was the Green Bay Packers, who ultimately who turned out to be the MVP in Aaron Rodgers, because he threw like 48 touchdowns and 5 picks, or was that the year before? Something like that. And an insane season. No, because Lamar... Rodgers threw something like 48 touchdowns and 5 picks, which is obscene, right? So Brady, in the bye week, he goes over to Irons and he's like, listen, we're not doing this anymore. This isn't working, right? So what happens? The defense is peaking. They get to a boil. They do very, very well. Brady he takes them. They win the remaining 5 games of the season, and then they win the next 3. So they run the table. They win 8 games to close off the season. People think, oh, will they even make the playoffs? They're 7-5. And Brady's like, absolutely yes. We're going to get to the playoffs and we're going to win the Super Bowl. So then, what ends up happening is, you get to the playoffs. Who's your first game against? The Saints. Right? Brady, cruises, led them to 30 points, and, they win by 10 points in the end. You also play the Washington football team. I think that was the first one, and they win that game as well. That was fine. And again, in the conference championship game, you go to the frozen tundra. You go to something that Aaron Rodgers has been campaigning for years and years and years, which is a NFC conference championship game at Lambeau Field. Brady throws 3 touchdowns. He also throws 3 picks. But he throws 3 touchdowns to get them in position to win the game. Right? He wasn't perfect by any means. This was not some vintage classic Tom Brady playoff run. But what did he do? He had them in a good enough position. He had the team with his leadership, with the intangibles that he brought around, that everyone speaks about. You speak around the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You talk to those guys, the interviews, all they do is glaze Tom Brady to the nth degree. It's absolutely fantastic. And they end up having him in a state where everything's all set up now. Now, you win that game 31-26, and it really was bigger because they kicked a field goal because it was a 2-score game. No, it was an 8-point game, and the coach didn't want to. Coach didn't trust Rodgers to go for it on the 4th and 8. So what ends up happening from here? Brady goes to the Super Bowl. You play against the Kansas City Chiefs, who are the defending and reigning Super Bowl champions from the year before, and Patrick Mahomes is going for a back-to-back Super Bowl championship. And what happens? Does Todd Bowles cook up an absolutely fantastic scheme? Yes. But what does Brady do? He throws his best and sharpest, most accurate game of the playoffs. He saved his best for last. They had 31 points in this game. Brady led them up. Even in this season, he threw for a bunch of yards. His yards went from 4,600 to 4,600 from 4,000. He went to 40 and 12 from 24 and 8. He was absolutely fantastic. 3 touchdowns, good run attack, no interceptions, clean, easy game. Brady gets the MVP. This is the crowning moment of his career. Why? Because like I said, up to this point, everyone tried to say Brady is more of a product of Belichick than Belichick is a product of Brady. And what happened? In the first year that Brady leaves from Belichick, and don't get me wrong, Belichick is the greatest defensive-minded coach the sport's ever seen, and there was a serious argument that he's the best coach the sport's ever seen. But Brady's first year removed from him goes to the Super Bowl and wins it. The Succaneers, who were awful. Since they won the Super Bowl in 2002, there was a serious argument they were the worst team in the sport for so long. They get Brady, and in the first year, he takes them to a title. That is how ridiculously great this guy is. Then, 2021, right? After he rips up the playbook in 2020 and says, we're doing my offense, we're doing Patriot-style offense, I'm going to make the Patriot way, and I'm going to make it the Brady way. I'm going to copyright it. No, I'm going to copyright it. I'm going to trademark it. And I'm going to bring it to Tampa Bay. And we're going to win. Bruce, be quiet. Leave. Shut up. And this is my team now. He stared him dead in the face. And he looked at my twat and he says, I'm the captain now. There's nothing you can do about this. It's over. And they won the goddamn Super Bowl. Todd Bowles takes over. And their offense improves from the year before. They go from Brady goes from 4,600 to 5,300. His touchdowns go from 40 to 43. And the picks stay the same. And everything is all primed up. And people think, oh, they might go back to back here. Wow, if he goes back to back, what are you going to do? That's 8 Super Bowls. And 7 in his office, that's 2 more than anyone else. That is 1 more than every single NFL franchise, than any franchise ever. The most ever is the Patriots and the Steelers. Who did the Patriots win theirs with? They won it with Uncle Tom. He won all 6 there. He won every single one of those 6 Super Bowls there. He runs off to Tampa Bay and he gets it to 7. He has more titles than any other team in NFL history. There is no conversation about this. No other player can ever say this. Because in football, Pele has 3 World Cups. But guess what? Germany has 4 or something. I think Germany have 4 or 5 World Cups. I think Italy have 4. Argentina have 3. So, it's the same. Bill Russell, Michael Jordan has 6. The Celtics have 19 or 18, something like that. The Celtics, they have 11. The Celtics still have 17. LeBron has 4. Cavs have 1, Heat have 3, fine. No one can say this across any sport. Tom Brady has 7, the teams have 6. That is the biggest feather in his cap. And you can say good situation, good this, good that. No, he wasn't a mercenary. He stayed with one team for 20 years. He leaves and wins 1 in 3 is the exact same rate. 1 in 3. He wins 7 in 21 years starting and is 1 in 3. And if you really want to factor in, if we throw out the final year because he was clearly declining, 7 in 20. 1 in better than every 3. That is absolutely ridiculous. You cannot ask for anything more than a guy what Tom Brady brought to the sport. So he gets there. 2021. He throws to 5-3, and in that final game, in the final playoff game where he was a serious contender in his career, they're down 27-6 to the Los Angeles Rams. And guess what happens? Brady happens. Again. At this point, I think the guy is genuine Satan incarnate. What on earth was going on? Because I liked Odell. I liked Von Miller. I wanted Odell to get his ring especially, even though he tore his ACL in the Super Bowl. I really wanted him to win. So I was rooting for them. And guess what happened? They're down 27-6. Brady, 1 touchdown. Brady, another touchdown. Brady, another touchdown. It's 27-all, and there's 42 seconds left, and they were down 3 touchdowns with 40 seconds left in the third quarter. At this point, I was genuinely considering whether I should just stop watching the sport because this guy is genuinely a Satan. He is the Antichrist. And thank God Stafford managed to get them down the field and kick the field. Because if that went to overtime, the Bucs would have won that game too. And they would have gotten back. They would have beaten... Who did the Rams beat in the championship game? The 49ers. And they would have beaten the 49ers. And they would have beaten... Who came out of there? They would have certainly beaten the Bengals. And they would have made easy work of it than the Rams did. So, that would have been ridiculous. 22, right? This was clear decline, right? He was clearly a worse quarterback. The zing wasn't there. He, again, same issue as his last year in England. He couldn't carry a team. He needed a comparable roster to the other top-line quarterbacks in the league to really, accentuate his control and get this team to the next level now. But again, right, the thing with Tom is, no team ever won. No team was better without him than they were with him. Right, that's huge. That's a huge thing. The coaches and these teams, right? The Bucs, they won 1 title before him, and they were all for the next 20 years. The Patriots, they got 2 Super Bowls. They never won the Super Bowl without him. These coaches never won. Belichick has a losing record without Brady. Bruce Arians, he was fine. He got to his peak was a championship game in 2015, where they got the doors blown off them by the Cam Newton-led Carolina Panthers. They lost 49-15. They were absolutely discreet. That Carson Palmer, Larry Fitzgerald, after a wonderful divisional round playoff win against the Packers, they got the doors blown off them in the championship game against the Carolina Panthers. So none of these guys had ever even reached a Super Bowl without Tom. None of these guys had put up a serious challenge in the NFC Championship game. In a championship game without Tom Brady. Brady gets them, and instantaneously, his first year with these organizations gets them to a Super Bowl both times. He is ridiculous. Even his coordinators, Josh McDaniels, Matt Patricia, some of these guys, right? It's not like these guys had mass success away from Tom. Like, McDaniels is decent. Patricia is, okay, fine. McDaniels is good. He's decent. But all of these guys, they couldn't accomplish anything without the greatness of Tom Brady. Everyone with Brady wins. You get to Brady, he'll give you the Make-A-Wish ring. That's what he is. He was that ridiculously great. The only person who couldn't was Randy Moss, and that was his fault. He was an asshole. And even then, had it not been for one of the greatest clutch performers in Eli Manning in the history of the sport, he's like the Reggie Miller of the NFL. He's like the Miroslav Klose of the NFL, as a better context. He's the guy who ups his level in the games at the highest, and the defense of the Giants was absolutely ridiculous. And Tom Coughlin put up together a wonderful game plan, and the Patriots' offensive line just couldn't block that day. You end up getting a guy who wins everywhere. He's absolutely ridiculous. He is the single greatest winner that I have ever seen across any sport. It doesn't matter what you have. He just wins over and over and over and over and over again. He's just that good. He's ridiculous. He is the GOAT of GOATs. He is the greatest of all time at the table of all the greatest of all time. Everyone knows that my favorite athlete is LeBron James. I think as a pure athlete, he peaked the highest. I think his peak is higher than any other athlete's peak in any sport ever. Team sport, specifically. Like, individual and team ones have to be separated. I think LeBron laps every other player when in NBA history when it comes. I think Michael Jordan is not at the same comparable level. You take the best Jordan. I think it's the 89, 90, or 91 because he's refined. You can even say 92. I like 91, 90 or 91. Absolutely wonderful. Jordan is at my head, and LeBron is somewhere above my head. Right? The rest of the guys are significantly below. You can have football. You can have Messi, Maradona, Brazilian Ronaldo. I can't say I've watched a ton of Pele. But, all these guys, LeBron laps them. But LeBron, what he didn't have is this thing that Brady has, which is, people talk about Michael Jordan's psychosis. People talk about Michael Jordan's will to win. Tom Brady has that times 1,000. Right? Brady never stopped to play and go play another sport. Brady never stopped to recharge his batteries. Brady never quit on an organization. Brady is the greatest winner to ever play. He has 0 peers. Patrick Mahomes could have possibly made it a conversation had he done this three-peat this year, but ultimately, even his Super Bowl performances they leave much to be desired. Right? Whether you want to go his first one against the 49ers, where for 3 quarters he wasn't good, and the thing which shocked them into into a significant chance of winning was when he threw just a Hail Mary throw. He punted it up to Tyreek Hill, who called a fair catch and dropped down, and then Jimmy Garoppolo ruins everything. The following year, he stunk it up, right? People want to say that he was good considering he's running for his life. I watched that game. Mahomes did some wonderful escape artistry, but he wasn't very good that game. And then if you want to talk about the next one he won, he was excellent against the Eagles. The one he won after that against the Niners, again, fantastic fourth quarter, right? But even against the Eagles in the first half, he wasn't exceptional. That was down to a defensive touchdown that kept him in the race. Mahomes is all world. He is an absolutely ridiculous quarterback. The fact that he is the closest person to rivaling Tom Brady's throne, and he's like here, and Brady's like up here, even away from them. Like, just everything you can possibly take into quarterbacking, he's insane. If Mahomes can get to 5 with another back-to-back, then maybe, fine, we can have this as a conversation. But until then, it's ridiculous. Like, even with his bad, mediocre teams, mediocre offenses, he would drag them up through the roof. He was absolutely ridiculous. He is incomparable. He is the greatest winner of all time, and I don't want to hear any different, basically. Like, you can bring whoever you want to the conversation, and Tom will beat them. You give me game for my life, Tom Brady versus anyone else ever. And I understand, right? It's hard because he's not 2'8", he's not this, he's not that. You give me Thomas Edward Patrick Brady Jr., and I like my chances against anyone. That man is the Antichrist. So if I want someone to protect me from losing and dying, give me that fella. He's ridiculous. That's all I got for today. This is about an hour. Last week was only half an hour. But hey, listen. Brady's the GOAT. You should all look into his career. He's a beautiful player. And, he's ridiculous. Greatest winner of all time with the greatest career in team sports history. The best. He is the greatest career in team sports history. He's the top one. So that's it. That's all I got for today. I hope you enjoyed an hour of Tom Brady praise. If you didn't, well, then, you should have shut off 20 minutes ago. But hey, what are you going to do? So, hope you all have a wonderful week, and I will see you again soon. And at this point, it will be... But the next time, so this is going out August 9th. August 16th will be the next one, and I'll be talking about Premier League football. Maybe I will, because I'm actually busy next time. I might not have a chance to record. But either way, the next episode will be about Premier League football. So that's what I'll be talking about. Maybe I'll get another roundtable in the meantime as well. Either way, I'll speak to you again soon. Thank you for watching. Like, rate, subscribe if you've managed to get this far, because Brady is great, and that's what I think you should do. And I'll speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.